There is a specific mindset that creates wealth, and the most uncomfortable truth about it is that it still works exactly the same way today as it did 100 years ago. We like to think the rules have changed because the technology has, but the psychological blueprint remains untouched. Most of us are exhausted because we're treating wealth like a scavenger hunt, wandering through the world hoping to stumble across the right opportunity or the perfect timing. We're working harder than ever, yet we feel like we're running on a treadmill, constantly reacting to life, but never actually moving the needle. The real cost isn't just the money you aren't making. It's the quiet, soul-crushing suspicion that you're missing a fundamental gear in the machine. You feel it in the middle of the night, that sense that no matter how much you hustle, you're still operating from a mental program that wasn't designed for the life you actually want. True financial authority doesn't come from a better strategy or a lucky break. It comes from a shift so subtle and so deep that most people walk right past it their entire lives. If you leave now, you'll keep trying to fix the reflection without ever changing the person standing in front of the mirror. So, let's begin. Most of us spend our lives waiting for the world to tap us on the shoulder. We're scanning the horizon for a lucky break, a market shift, or a door to suddenly swing open, thinking that wealth is something that happens to us once the timing is right. But if you look closely at the people who actually build something, you'll notice a quiet, almost uncomfortable truth. They didn't find an opportunity and then decide to be wealthy. They decided to be wealthy, and then, only then, did the world start looking like a map of opportunities. It sounds backward, doesn't it? We're taught to be realistic. We're told to wait for proof. We think we need a business plan, or a promotion, or a windfall before we can truly claim that identity. But that's just reacting. It's like standing in front of a cold fireplace and saying, "Give me some heat, and then I'll throw in the wood." Life doesn't work like that. Wealth begins as a private, internal movement. It's a mental pivot that happens in a room alone, long before a single dollar changes hands. It's that moment where you stop saying, "I'd like to," and start saying, "I am." Most of the world is stuck in a cycle of reaction. We react to the bills, we react to the boss, we react to the news. We're like leaves in the wind, wondering why we haven't landed in a pile of gold yet. The shift happens when you realize that your bank account is actually a trailing indicator. It's just a ghost of your past thoughts. If you want the reflection in the mirror to change, you don't scrub the glass. You change the person standing in front of it. Think about the last time you really, truly decided on something. Not a New Year's resolution that lasted 3 days, but a bone-deep decision. There's a certain weight to it, a quietness. You stop looking for exits. You stop asking people for permission to be successful. It's funny, really. We spend so much energy trying to fix our external circumstances, checking our apps, refreshing our balance, when the actual bottleneck is just a lack of inner authority. We're waiting for a sign from the universe, while the universe is actually waiting for a signal from us. We think we're being patient, but usually we're just being indecisive. We're keeping one foot on the dock and one foot in the boat, wondering why we feel so much tension. Wealth requires a total departure from that middle ground. It demands a mental commitment so absolute that the how starts to feel secondary to the fact of its arrival. It's about moving from a state of wishing to a state of being. Because a wish is just a polite way of saying you don't have it. And as long as your mind is focused on the not having, well, you're staying exactly where you are. It's a strange, invisible threshold where you finally stop negotiating with your own potential and you start looking at your future as a fixed point on the horizon, not a maybe, but a destination you've already checked into. There's a massive, exhausting gap between wanting something and being ready to receive it. We all want things. We want the freedom, the security, the commas in the bank account. But wanting is a hungry, desperate state. It's a confession of lack. When you want, you're essentially telling your own brain that the thing you desire is far away, somewhere over there, out of reach. And your brain, being the loyal servant it is, agrees. It keeps the dream at a safe, comfortable distance, so you never actually have to deal with the pressure of having it. The shift happens when that vague ambition hardens into something much heavier, something non-negotiable. It's the difference between hoping the light turns green and knowing with every fibre of your being that you are going to drive through that intersection. When your mind accepts wealth as inevitable, your behaviour starts to change without you even trying to hustle harder. You stop procrastinating not because you suddenly found a better productivity app, but because you can't afford to waste time when you're on your way to a certainty. It's like, think about when you're catching a flight. You don't try to get to the airport. You don't weigh the pros and cons of showing up at the gate. You just go. There's a quiet, focused urgency because the outcome is already decided. The ticket is bought. The seat is yours. Most people are trying to build a life without ever buying the ticket. They're standing in the lobby, looking at the departures board, feeling motivated but never actually committing to the journey. And that's why it feels so hard. That's why it feels like you're constantly fighting yourself. You're trying to force the actions of a wealthy person while still carrying the identity of someone who's just trying their best. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? We think conviction is the reward we get after we see the results. We think, once I see the money, then I'll believe it's possible. But the world is a little more stubborn than that. It waits for you to go first. It waits for that moment of internal acceptance where you stop looking for a plan B because plan A has become a part of your DNA. This isn't about shouting affirmations at your mirror until you've convinced yourself of a lie. It's more subtle. It's a quiet, internal settling. A realization that the struggle isn't with the economy or the competition, but with the part of you that's still addicted to the safety of being someone who wants. Because wanting is safe. Wanting has no risk of failure. But accepting is terrifying. It means you've closed the door on excuses. You've stopped being a spectator in your own ambition. You start to realize that the only thing standing between you and that inevitable version of yourself is a layer of doubt you've been coddling like a security blanket. And the moment you let it go, the air feels different. The path doesn't get easier necessarily. It just becomes the only path left to walk. And suddenly, all that noise in your head, all that second guessing just quietens down. And the moment you let it go, the air feels different. Primarily because you've stopped waiting for a permission slip that was never going to come. You start to realize that this feeling, this steady internal conviction, isn't something you're born with. It's not a personality trait reserved for the naturally bold or the annoyingly optimistic. It's a trained state. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it feels weak and shaky the first time you try to put any weight on it. We often mistake faith for blind optimism, like we're just supposed to close our eyes and hope the universe is in a good mood. But real faith, the kind that actually builds empires, is much more practical. It's the deliberate management of your own internal dialogue. It's what you say to yourself when the bank account says something else. It's about being your own most reliable witness. Think about how we usually talk to ourselves. We're often our own most toxic roommates. We repeat our failures like they're a favourite song. We practice doubt until we're world-class at it. We've spent years training ourselves to expect the bare minimum, and then we wonder why we feel paralyzed when a real opportunity shows up. Wealth builders do something different. They don't wait for proof to feel confident. They use their confidence to manufacture the proof. They understand that if you wait for the world to validate you, you'll be waiting forever. The world is too busy looking for someone to follow to bother leading you. This training happens in the quiet, boring moments. It's the repetitive, almost stubborn insistence that your current reality is just a temporary glitch. It's a form of self-hypnosis, honestly. But then again, you're already hypnotizing yourself, usually with stories about why you're stuck, why the market is too crowded, or why you're just not that kind of person. If you're going to tell yourself a story anyway, you might as well tell one that pays better. It's a strange exercise, acting from a place of self-trust before you've earned it. It feels a little fraudulent at first. You might feel like a kid wearing their parents' oversized shoes, clunking around and hoping no one notices you don't fit yet. But that's the secret. No one fits at first. You grow into the shoes by walking in them. You start to replace the "what if it goes wrong" with a very specific, very calm "what if it goes right?" And you do it again and again, until that internal narrative becomes louder than the external noise. Eventually, you stop looking for external evidence to justify your confidence. You realize that your self-trust is the only evidence you ever actually needed. It becomes this steady, low-frequency hum in the background of your life. A quiet assurance that you're no longer guessing. And once that trust is locked in, your mind starts playing with possibilities you used to think were reserved for someone else entirely. Because you've finally given yourself permission to use the most expensive tool you own. Your imagination. We tend to treat imagination like something we left behind in a toy box in second grade. We call it daydreaming when we're feeling guilty, or wishful thinking when we're being cynical. But in the world of wealth, imagination isn't a distraction. It's the construction site. It's the bridge between a thought that costs nothing and a reality that pays everything. The truth is, money is a bit of a bore. It's just paper or digits. It doesn't do anything on its own. It's a byproduct of a mental blueprint that was drawn up long before the first brick was laid. Most people are out there trying to build a house without a drawing, wondering why the walls keep falling down. They're working hard, sure, but they're working without a vision. They're earners, not creators. An earner looks at what is. They look at the current salary, the current market, the current limitations. But a creator, someone using their imagination as a bridge, looks at what could be. They realize that every major fortune, every world-changing company, every clever solution that someone eventually paid millions for, started as a flicker of an idea that someone was brave enough to take seriously. It's about seeing the opportunity in the mess. It's about looking at a problem and, instead of complaining about it at dinner, mentally rearranging the pieces until they form a solution. And this is where the subtle humor of life kicks in. We spend thousands of dollars on productivity tools and masterclasses, yet we let our most powerful engines sit idle because we're too busy scrolling through other people's finished products. We're consuming their imagination instead of exercising our own. Think about it. Every comfort you have right now, the phone in your hand, the chair you're sitting in, the app you're listening to, was once just a ghost in someone's head. Someone had to sit in the dark and see it so clearly that it became more real to them than the empty room they were sitting in. If you can't see the wealth in your mind, you'll never see it in your hands. It's not about hallucinating, it's about architecting. It's about taking those raw desires and those trained states of faith and giving them a shape, a plan, a structure. When you start doing this, you stop competing. You realize you don't have to fight for a piece of the pie when you're the one in the kitchen designing new recipes. But there's a catch. Imagination is a delicate thing. It requires a certain kind of mental authority to protect it from the realistic people in your life and the realistic voice in your own head. It requires a certain firmness, a refusal to let your vision be blurred by the way things look today. Because the moment you see the bridge clearly, you realize the only thing left to do is start walking. Even if the fog hasn't fully lifted yet, you realize that the strength to keep walking isn't about physical stamina. It's about a psychological firmness that most people mistake for mere luck. We like to call it persistence or grit, as if it's some heroic trait you're either born with or you aren't. But really, it's just a sign of mental authority. It's the ability to make a decision and then stay in the room with it, even when the initial excitement has evaporated and you're left with the boring, quiet work of the middle. Most people are world-class starters. We're great at the day one energy, the new notebooks, the fresh spreadsheets, the big declarations. But we're also professional quitters. The moment the world pushes back, we take it as a sign that we were wrong. We treat a no or a setback like a cosmic verdict on our worth. We hesitate. We second guess. We check with our friends to see if they think we're being unrealistic. But wealth builders have this weird, almost irritating quality. They decide quickly and they change their minds slowly, if they change them at all. It's not because they're smarter or because they have some secret information. It's because they've realized that hesitation is just a mental habit. It's a way of hiding from the responsibility of being right. When you have inner clarity, you don't need to poll the audience. You don't need a 3-month committee meeting with your own insecurities. You just act. And when things get difficult, which they always do because life has a funny way of testing your price tag, you stay. Persistence is really just the refusal to let your environment dictate your mood. It's the quiet, stubborn insistence that your internal blueprint is more real than the temporary mess in front of you. It's almost funny when you think about it. We spend so much time worrying about being wrong, when the only real mistake is stopping before the momentum kicks in. We treat failure like it's a destination, a place where you unpack your bags and live. But for those with mental authority, failure is just a data point. It's a not this way, which is just as valuable as a that way. This kind of firmness doesn't look like shouting or posturing. It looks like a person who isn't easily moved. It looks like someone who can sit in the discomfort of a slow start without feeling the need to apologize for it. We've been conditioned to think that if something doesn't work immediately, it's a sign to pivot. But usually it's just a sign that you haven't finished the conversation with yourself yet. You haven't fully committed to the authority of your own choice. And that's the thing about wealth. It doesn't respond to trying. It responds to deciding. It waits for you to show that you aren't going to be scared off by a little silence or a few closed doors. Because deep down, below the noise of our daily effort, there's a much more powerful engine at work. One that's been listening to every doubt and every decision you've ever made, quietly steering your life while you think you're the one holding the wheel. We like to think of ourselves as purely logical creatures. We check the spreadsheets, we weigh the risks, we make the smart moves. But if that were true, we'd all be exactly where we want to be by now. The reality is that there's a deeper layer of programming, a subconscious current, that dictates how much success we're actually willing to tolerate. It's that sixth sense that nudges you to take a risk, or more often, whispers that you should play it safe. It's the internal thermostat that's been set to a certain level of enough. If you've spent your whole life programmed to believe that wealth is for other people, Your mind will literally blind you to opportunities that are standing right in front of your face. You won't even see the door, let alone walk through it. This isn't some mystical secret. It's just how our brains are wired to survive. Your subconscious doesn't care if you're rich. It only cares that you're safe. And to your inner programming, safe usually just means whatever we've done before. Breaking that cycle isn't about working harder at your desk. It's about working deeper on your alignment. It's about convincing that hidden part of yourself that a new, wealthier reality isn't a threat. It's the new home. Until that internal programming changes, you'll find yourself subconsciously sabotaging your own wins, or hesitating at the exact moment you should be leaning in. When you look back at the path we've walked, you start to see how these threads tie together. It all begins with that solitary, mental decision, that quiet pivot where you stop reacting to the world and start defining it. But that decision only gains weight when it shifts from a wish into a sense of inevitability. You move from wanting to expecting, and in that shift, you begin the slow, steady training of your own self-trust. You build the architecture of your future in the workshop of your imagination, seeing the bridge long before the world acknowledges it's there. And then you apply that mental authority. You stay in the room. You refuse to let the fog of the middle ground talk you out of the clarity you found in the beginning. All of these moments, the decisions, the faith, the persistence, they aren't just actions, they are signals. They are the language you use to rewrite that deep, subconscious script. Every time you act from a place of conviction rather than fear, you're telling that sixth sense that the new reality is real. You're moving the needle on your internal thermostat. Wealth, it turns out, isn't a prize you win at the end of a race. It's the state of being you carry with you from the very first step. It's a landscape that exists inside you before it ever shows up on a map. It's been a lot to process, I know. It's one thing to hear these truths and another to sit with them while you're staring at your own reflection or your own bank account. But I'm curious, where are you in this process? Do you feel like you're still waiting for that permission slip? Or have you felt that quiet shift into inevitability? I'd honestly love to hear your thoughts in the comments. It helps to know we're all navigating these same internal corridors. If this conversation meant something to you today, it would mean a lot to me if you'd let me know. Maybe by liking and hyping the video or joining us here on the channel. It's just a small way to keep the lights on for more of these moments. Take care of yourself. And remember, the door is already there. You just have to decide that you're the kind of person who walks through it. I'll see you in the next one.